This week, I welcome comedian Byron Bowers.
And I remember visiting New York or LA, trying to see which one I would live at. I went to New York and I saw an older lady and she looked beat up. And then I came to LA and I seen a homeless man laying in the street and the sun was shining on him. He had the most luxurious hair I ever seen on a homeless person. And I was like, if this is the worst it can get, then I can make it in this place, you know.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you are welcome. You know the drill. Please subscribe, rate, comment, share, reach out, tell your friends, send smoke signals, whatever. We love your feedback and we want to hear from you. If you like our work and want to support us, the best way to do that is join Phetasy.com. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes content, outtakes, discounts on merch, and the ability to submit questions for some of our upcoming guests. Support your favorite scrappy little internet heroes at Phetasy.com. All right. I'm with Byron Bowers, everyone. Welcome to Walk-Ins Welcome.
Yo! How you doing? How you doing?
I'm so good. I noticed we're both freezing in our warm winter gear in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Man, it hit 40, it hit 40s and I'm like, oh, the world is ending.
Yeah, it gets cold. People are like, oh, you don't need heat in LA. I'm like, it's the desert, guys. It gets cold at night.
Yeah, never underestimate what goes on. I went to the desert in the middle of the night one time and it was like 70 degrees in LA. And by the time I got to the desert, it was 35 degrees. I was not prepared.
No, exactly. I just had friends go and I told them they needed to bring fleece-lined pants for their hike and they were laughing at me and they were saying they would have frozen to death had they not had their fleece-lined pants. People don't know.
What's your favorite like desert?
I mean,
in Southern Cali.
Joshua Tree is my church and I noticed that you filmed the opening of your special in what looks like Joshua Tree.
Yeah, Pioneer Town, so it's close.
Yeah, I love Pioneer Town.
It's close. It's such a beautiful place. And you got the what's the steakhouse that's right there? Harriet's or
Poppy and Harriet's?
I forget the Pappy and Harriet's is just right there.
Yeah, where they have all the music.
I mean, the music. They got some of the best like food. And like I'm 30 minutes off that main road when I would go to this house, and it's such a beautiful place to go out there. And it actually snowed twice while I was out there, and it's beautiful to see snow in the desert.
Yeah, I love it when it snows. That's really, Joshua Tree is my church, I would say. If I had to say I go to church, that's where I've been going. I've been going there. I was just talking about the first time I went there when I was 30, and I've been going probably at least 5 times a year ever since, usually more.
Oh, I would think you're 30 now.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm 44.
Wow. Yeah, I'm such a fan of that place. My favorite place in Joshua Tree is Jumbo Rocks.
I love Jumbo Rocks.
And it's a good place to go. Yeah.
Have you been to the amphitheater in there?
Do shrooms or whatever. I haven't.
You haven't? No? Okay, sorry, you're breaking up a little. Yeah, there's an amphitheater in Jumbo Rocks. Like if you go into the campground, you can hike into this little amphitheater. And I always used to joke that I was going to film a stand-up special there and make everybody do mushrooms in the audience and film it out there. But yeah, there's this little like amphitheater in the middle of Jumbo Rocks.
I would love to see that. That would be a great experience for our audience. You talking about connecting to everybody. That'll be like any concert or any spoken word venue when everybody's on shrooms. It would just be amazing.
You is that why you started doing stand-up, to connect to people? When did you start doing it?
I think I started 3 times.
Okay.
The first time I was on stage in the early 2000s, and I got booed by a whole club, and I quit that night. And
I've been there.
I went back, yeah, and I went back and I did well, and then I bombed for like 6 months. Then I quit again. And the third time, 2005, was the time that I was like, I'm just doing it. I just graduated from college, and I had nothing, and I was like, I'm about to embark on this journey. And my instincts were like, this will take you to the promised land. And I didn't know what that was, but I knew that, it's where I needed to go. So that's when all the sacrifices started to happen.
Tell me about the sacrifices. This show is all about grit and resilience, so we love these stories.
Well, I'm one of the first to graduate from college in my family, and I immediately went into stand-up. And I got Bachelor of Science in Engineering, and a Business Management is what I finished with. Um, and I remember I told my grandma, she was like, what you gonna do? You gonna get a job? And I was like, nah, I'm finna go straight and into comedy. And that's how my aunt would introduce me. Like, this is the guy who graduated from college and decided to go tell jokes. So, I mean, it's an immediate loss of respect, and you become that N-word just laying around the house. Um, and it affects your dating life, of course, because when everybody else graduate and they get their jobs, they want to go do these things, and it's like you're in a dive bar like every night. You're not watching no games. I think I gave away my TV, so TV became nothing. And all the socializing and stuff was just gone.
Where were you at this time when you graduated?
I was in Atlanta, Georgia,
Okay.
at the time, and I lived with my homeboy. And luckily I left because my room blew up after I left. So
Like
if I didn't
actually
leave, I
blew
probably
up?
would have been dead. Yeah, it was a situation at the house where gas ignited and
Oh
caught on fire.
shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And you narrowly escaped your death by by leaving?
Yeah, about 2 months.
Wow.
Me and a friend of mine, we left at the same time. He went to the Navy and I went to LA. And I remember visiting New York or LA trying to see which one I would live at. And I went to New York and I saw an older lady and she looked beat up. And then I came to LA and I seen a homeless man laying in the street. And the sun was shining on him. He had the most luxurious hair I ever seen on a homeless person. And I was like, if this is the worst it can get, then I can make it in this place, you know. So I had $500. I had my ex at the time I was engaged, and I had $500, and I just put a timing belt on my Honda Prelude, and I put a bumper on it because it didn't have a bumper on it, and I drove it all the way to California with the check engine light on.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love these stories. It is funny though.
Now I was supposed to leave in 2006, but every time I was gonna leave, I got in a car accident.
So when did you get
So nobody
here?
thought in 2008.
Oh, okay. That's like when I came. That's the same year I came back, 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's funny. I was deciding on New York or LA too, and there was very similar reasons for. You can still even back then, maybe not so much now, but it's hard to be poor in New York City after a certain age, I think. In your 20s, whatever, but I don't know. I was pushing 30 and I was like I can kind of get away with being poor in LA. and I can't.
Imagine Atlanta. Imagine Atlanta being poor in Atlanta when you supposed to already have at 30, you already supposed to have your second child.
Yeah. That story
in a house.
That story you tell of like being the first to graduate from college and then go into comedy. It's such a common story you hear from like second generation immigrant kids. You know, people whose parents came to America and then they're like, oh, you're gonna go become a comedian after I fled these horrific like conditions for you.
I remember having conversations with different comics. Hassan is the one that stick out to me. Hassan Minhaj is when he, coming from a Muslim background, and they wanted him to be, a doctor or a lawyer, and a religious background. I'm also from a religious background, and he was asking me questions on what do your people think and all this, and I was like, "Fuck that shit," you just got to go for it. And I see where he at now, and I'm almost like, man, proud that he did it.
You're like, I never should have given him that advice.
No, definitely give him that advice.
Yeah.
I had to do the same thing. You know, freedom isn't free; it costs.
Yeah, I agree.
And the stakes are high. So
yeah,
I mean, I did the whole sleep in the car thing, and I remember like having $5, and I was like, all right, I could eat at McDonald's like twice. And I see a homeless man eating whole foods, and I'll be like mad. I'll be jealous,
Yeah, they
because he didn't have a car.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have all these expenses. Yeah, it's funny too. You were mentioning on it sounds like you've had just a real challenging life in a lot of respects that you've managed to turn into creativity and comedy. And on your This Is Not Happening, you talked about the day you found out that your dad was using crack, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. It's one of those life-changing days as a youth. It's things that happens to certain people that have their innocence taken away.
Yes.
And though that was one of those times, another I mentioned the sexual experience that happened when I was around 10. That was another thing. And then just bouncing around as a kid and being put in different environments also takes away from that,
Yeah. It's funny. I've been writing a lot about this, and we've been doing I have like a subscriber community, and we've been doing a writing prompt a day, and nothing will trigger like old memories that you forgot you even had, like a random writing prompt. And there was one about a raft, and I wrote about this summer, and it reminded me, I was like, oh, this was the last summer I was innocent. All the shit started happening after that summer. And then but it really was this last, I was getting emotional writing this prompt. Just remembering like, oh, there was a time when I had this kind of wholesomeness, and then it was gone.
Now, was it environment factors or the time and age that it all hit at one time?
That's a good question. And yes, it did, because as I was saying in the writing, when I was writing this prompt, part of it was just age. I was 11 and I was 5th grade going into 6th grade. I was 11. I had moved a lot. So it wasn't like things were always easy, but they got way harder. So I was saying in this piece, like, this is when I started learning things can always get worse. People are always like, it'll get better. And I'm like, it's not always the case. And, but then I also went through puberty. So it was like the end of my actual innocence in a, physiological sense. And I think I got my period later in that year. But then it was also just my parents got divorced. A crazy person entered. I think that was something I really related to you in your material and that I love. is you talk about your father having schizophrenia and not really knowing how to, first of all, understand. When I was young, I didn't understand mental illness. Even now, older with time and compassion and understanding, it's still hard for me to kind of get my mind around it. You know, there's being raised by somebody like that. I was going to ask you when I was watching your stuff, I'm like, do you have like a spidey sense for crazy people? Were you looking at Kanye years ago like, that guy's nuts? he's crazy.
Well, I don't know. With Kanye, I still don't know.
Oh,
because
you're
he do
on the
crazy
fence.
shit, and then 10 years later, it swings around. Like he did an interview. Somebody said 10 years ago or 5 years ago, he said he want to make everybody hate him. He said that.
Yeah, but don't you have, isn't that the thing though? I mean, my experiences with bipolar, and I think there's some diagnosis of like some schizophrenia there. It's definitely in the family of the person that I grew up with, and they had insight that was true. Like that's the weird thing about delusions. They're not all wrong, but they're still delusional. The crazy person was the person who told me that I needed to pursue my creative dreams and that I was a creative. And it took me decades to try and undo what was true and what wasn't, from like separating the message from the messenger, because for a long time I thought I was just crazy for believing this crazy person.
Well, that's the part I mean, because I haven't gotten sound advice from people that's living on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
You know, directional advice, you know, guidance, and it wasn't the same for certain people who you thought was doing well.
Yeah.
So I think the more you get aware and in tune with your spiritual self, or you know, your higher self, then some of those things start to make sense. It's just like what part of the spectrum. They might be a little deeper into the spectrum than you are, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the scary part, is like when you deal with somebody that's bipolar or has schizophrenia, it's like, well, what reality are you in? Like this is real. This is real to them.
Yeah.
So that makes it true.
Yeah.
It might not be true to me, but I have to go along with it for a while. So yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. With Ye, I don't know. I just bag back, you know. The thing when you're raised by somebody like that is to determine whether, like, my memories now, I don't know if he was, you know, he had to be delusional then. Like he had to be paranoid then, giving me some advice as a kid. So it's hard, like, separating was the real thing versus the advice that's coming from the point of view of somebody that's a little skewed. And we are like that also.
Yeah.
Now, as we give people advice.
Yeah. Do you find that it's funny, because I love like scrolling Twitter and looking at what everyone's saying about a situation, and I know a lot of people, particularly in the Black community, were like, "We've been telling you about Kanye," in this most recent kind of public meltdown. But then again, there's a lot of people who are like, "No, this is all like 5D chess," and I think the same thing. People were saying that people said this kind of about Trump too, where it was like, oh, he's either like a buffoon or a crazy person, or he's this genius, like playing 5D chess. And I find it very challenging, knowing my own background, to try and discern what is and isn't true. You know, some days I'm like, no, they're just crazy. And other days I'm like, maybe it is 5D chess. Maybe it's both.
I try not to engage it, because either way you give power to it.
Yeah.
To it. And I said that with Trump. I was like, you know, coming from a city like Atlanta where rappers would blow up that way with mixtapes.
Yeah.
Because all you need is a buzz. Whether people liked it or didn't, they talked about it. And that was the buzz. And that's how I saw Trump. And I was like, oh, he's getting big. This is like the most gangster shit I've seen.
Yeah. He
And
trolled
he's
his
not
way.
and he's not a politician. And then people was trying to put him in the position or saying he should act like a politician when he thinks and his moves are like a billionaire.
Yeah.
And he know how he know what he's doing. We're not billionaires. So we can't even think on that level. We don't even deal with the type of snakes he deals with. You know, he called Putin. And they was like, you're not supposed to call Putin. And he was like, why not? You know what I mean? So as crazy as we are, he's, multiple of that because the rules he play by and live by are different.
Yeah. No, that's a really good, really great insight. You can't even try and understand because it's not, we're not even in the same league.
He buried his ex-wife on a golf course for the tax breaks.
Wow.
You see how silly that sounds? And then you say for the tax breaks and then they become a genius again.
Yeah.
It's teetering that line of like balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Metaphysically speaking.
Yeah. I love how you're trying to kind of attack a lot of these definitely oftentimes confusing subjects on stage and in all of your material, because it is funny. We talk a lot on this podcast about mental illness and in our society. Like you say, you're like, oh, I'm glad that people even know what schizophrenia is now, and that's progress. But we often talk about how it doesn't seem like the crisis is getting any better. It seems like people are going crazier. So I'm not sure that all the awareness is helping. Or
it is, but at the end of the day, it's like I look at awareness like this is a sad thing until I'm hungry.
Right.
Then I gotta figure out what I gotta eat.
Right.
So that's how I'm looking at this. And I watch people go through these things and tell you what's sad. Like, even that's why I do the sea turtle piece about how we got these rules to protect sea turtles. And then we got like 90,000 homeless people walking around. And I'm not even paying attention to them. Mm-hmm. And I used to sleep in my car. So a part of me feel guilty. Like, I seen a young homeless person the other day, and I was like, he's gonna make it. Like, he's on his journey. And that might not necessarily be the case, but that's where my delusion is.
Right. Right.
Like, he wanted bad.
That's really funny. I love your sea turtle bit where you're like, the one sea turtle died and they were like, we're shutting the straws down.
We shutting it down. And one video of the sea turtle went viral. And yet we live in this place where, the homeless just wandering around and they got their own society. And I have a jealousy because I'm a little jealous because it's a freedom they have. Right? Like, they literally live on the beach.
Yeah.
They got showers on the beach. They got tents on the beach. And the people who pay rent can't even live on the beach. They got to live across the street from the beach.
Yeah.
Across the highway from the beach. So I'm like, they got the best life.
Yeah.
A sick part of me is like, they got the best. Look at them. They wake up to nature. They smell it. They got birds when they unzip their tents. They got a gym on the beach. They got fish in the ocean. Like, it's something so spiritually about it. But when you in this world society that put these things on it, then that becomes crazy. And I'm like, maybe it's society. We're the crazy ones.
Yeah. I remember having that same feeling like back in 2009. It was right after the 2008 crash. I had just come back here. I was like, couldn't afford to buy shampoo. My car was about to be repoed. It was 3 months late on payment. I was filing for bankruptcy. It was just bad all across the board. And I was going for a walk or something, and there was just a homeless guy reading like some nice book in the middle of the park. And I had been kind of worried that I was any minute going to be facing that reality. But then I was like, oh, maybe I'll have time to read. I kind of
That's crazy.
suddenly was like, all right, maybe I'll have more time to read some books, because I was just running around LA trying to hustle work as a yoga instructor and working with kids with autism. And I was really just fighting to try and make ends meet. And I had that same moment where I was like, maybe I'm the insane, crazy one. And this guy right here in the park with his book actually knows something I don't.
And what's dope about it? We throw away books now, right? That book could have been from 1962.
It looked like it was.
And it still would have been, it still could have been a good read.
Yeah.
It still was entertaining and create thoughts in his mind. And it could take him to a place where, where he'd like, man, I got it good now.
Yeah.
Because you know what I say as a homeless person or a person that slept in my car in LA? Man, thank God I'm not in New York.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's levels. It's just levels to it.
I have this all the time. I always say, when I'm in a good place, I'll be like, never forget these are the good old days. Because I look back on that time when I was sleeping on the blow-up mattress, and we couldn't afford. My producer now is also my cousin, but we've been on this journey, like just scraping by forever. And we laugh about that time. We couldn't even afford a teapot. We did the master cleanse, but not because we wanted to lose weight, just because we couldn't afford food. We're like, we can get lemons.
Oh, snap. That's hilarious.
We can do lemons and molasses for like 2 weeks. I didn't eat for 2 weeks because we were just so poor. And I was like, I can tell myself I'm on a cleanse. That's the great thing about LA. You can just be like, I'm on a cleanse even when you're broke.
Wow.
And we've been on this for a long time.
That's the smartest thing. No, go ahead.
Right before I logged in, my camera wasn't working, and I get very frustrated by things like that. But it brings me to a place that's like almost immediately, and I don't know if this is just old thinking or whatever, but where I'm like, I'm such a fucking loser. Why is my shit still so janky? Why don't I have this stuff dialed in? Why don't I have a studio? And I have to sit back and be like, you're about to have a dope conversation with a artist you respect. And this is awesome that we have the technology to do this, and you weren't doing this. And I have to remember, because I'm kind of two minds, I'll go to that place where I get frustrated, and then I immediately kind of, my thoughts cascade to like, well, I'm a loser.
Well, I have the same thing, and I think that was taught. That behavior that conditioning came from somewhere, because those are the thoughts that Kanye West don't have.
No, he's like, I'm a genius.
Yeah, because his mom implemented that in him. And even if he falls short of that, he could still be a billionaire. And I'm learning that's the difference between your environment coming up, right? It don't matter if you have certain conditions, mental conditions or whatever. If it's nurtured properly, you're going to think everybody else is like off a little bit, or not. Sometimes I think everybody else is crazy as I watch them do certain things. And I'm like, I'm just off enough to not get caught up into a lot of stuff,
It seems like you're doing so much. I was going to ask you about, it seemed, the acting portion. Did you start as a comedian and then get into acting, or was acting something that you were concurrently working on while you were doing stand-up?
I wrote acting down in my goals list and being on TV in like maybe 2010, 2011. But this something that, just like I got into stand-up, when people are like, hey man, you funny, you should try to do stand-up, you say some wild shit. Acting is a version of that. When I did something and they was like, hey, you kind of cool, you should do it. And I'm like, for real? And they like, yeah. And I do another thing, and I still second guess it, because like I'm like sitting across from like Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
And people who went to Juilliard and people who went to Yale, and I'm acting across from them. And so I'm still in that place sometimes like, oh, I'm a loser, or how did I get here? Or what am I doing here? And I really have to say this thing to realize that, oh, I wrote this stuff down. It comes from an ignorant place. I feel like the Black Forrest Gump sometimes, you know?
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I totally understand that though. It does. And literally right before I got on this podcast, which is why it feels so divinely inspired that we're having this conversation, I texted someone. I'm like, I feel like such a fraud, like, because my camera wouldn't work. And this happens to people with money too. You know, technical stuff happens to everyone. It doesn't just happen to me. But for me, when it happens, I'm like, I'm an imposter. I should just hang it all up, call it a day.
Even the CEO of Apple probably is like, hey, why my CarPlay don't work?
Yeah.
Or Siri be like, what did you say?
Yeah.
You know, so it's just a part of it. But we can't even worry about the old stuff because we got AI coming.
No kidding.
We got bigger AI. Yeah, we got bigger fish to fry now.
Have you been obsessed with the AI developments lately? Because I have.
Me, I haven't, but I'm definitely looking to see where it goes. I know the kids now, from what I understand, don't like cell phones anymore. They think it's old technology. So they want to be able to access everything without actually holding the phone.
What do they want? Like a microchip?
It gotta be inside.
Yeah.
And this is something we fought against 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's definitely coming. And I had a bad rant on acid one time when I told God, I was asking him, why did he put me here? Why did he banish me on earth? And I've told him that I will build a better version of humans. I was like, you created humans in your image, but I'm going to create something better that can last longer, that'll think faster. The material will be made from you made your material from sand. I'm making mine from metal. And after I went through that rant, I just felt like this energy. And now that I see what's going on, I'm like, whatever energy I felt is actually a real thing that's going on now with the human and nature. And I see it developing with AI, and I'm like, it's kind of scary because I don't know. I just don't know. Will it be the end of us, as as everything predicted? Because to me, we are a version of AI.
Yeah.
We just an older version of it.
Yeah. No, watching my daughter. So I just had a baby girl and she's almost 9 months old. And I've been joking that it's like watching AI become sentient. Like it's crazy how fast she learns things, assimilates them, does new things one day that she didn't do the day before. And you're like, when did you learn? Where did you get that download? When did you learn that? I never saw you doing that. And then next thing she gets so excited about all of her new little downloads that she's getting. But it is wild seeing just the human brain as it learns things in that first year in particular. It's so crazy. She's just.
Do you get afraid that you could tinker with the programming a little bit?
Whether
like traumatically?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's part of the reason I didn't really want kids. She's kind of like a unexpected miracle child because I'm older. They told me I was in menopause. It's like crazy long story. And then she just was like, hey, my like little jingle that I made up for her is that she was an astral traveler and just kind of decided she wanted to see what was going on Earth. And it was interesting that you used the word banished, like God banished you here. I thought that was funny. I was like, wow, you could do a whole sketch on how this is like the Australia of the universe. It's like where the spiritual criminals go. I just find it funny
hilarious.
that's the way the word you use specifically. And yeah, for her, it seems like she really just was like, what's going on down there? I want to take human form and find out. And of course I worry because I see my own programming and how my husband and I actually have a podcast, which will eventually, when we start having guests on, what we would love to have you on. And it's all about factory settings, what I call factory settings, which are is that default stuff. Like, think of it as in nature, it's not really that part. It's the nurture part that we really had no control over, like socioeconomics, where we were born, what religion was pumped into our brain, what trauma we had to go through before you're even aware of it, and how much that clouds literally everything that you experience for the rest of your life. And then becoming aware of those factory settings and being able to at least recognize some of your own biases and have some control over them a little bit or change them. And so, yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about this and have really forever. You reminded me of a podcast when you were talking about your acid trip that I heard. It wasn't a podcast. It was a radio show back in like 2000 I lived here when I was like 21 as well. And it was on KCRW. And they were talking about the nature of the soul. This was like when Napster was coming out, and it was the dawn of all this stuff. And they were talking about silicon versus carbon. And they had this panel of people, and someone said, maybe the human evolution is essentially jumping elements. Like we're gonna take our soul and we'll move from being a carbon element to to more made of silicon. And I was like, this was in 2000, and I was so high. I was like, this is freaking terrifying. And now I see there's like all kinds of transhuman talk. It's like the rage right now.
Yeah, we studied that the dangers of technology in 2000s, and we're the group that came out with Napster, of engineers and P2P networking and bootlegging, and I sold a lot of like software in my day. So I remember when these things, when they told us in 2000, it would be a camera the size of a penny, that would do surveillance, and you won't have to hang them up because the kids will play with them, and they will film everything. And now we have cell phones, the robot dogs we talked about, different forms of technology. But I do think as we deal with the global warming, that we will need, in order for the humans to survive, to find probably a better suit or armor, that can help us deal with the elements. Because when I had my first major trip, I felt my soul landed on this planet, and I was wearing a suit, and I remember just like getting used to the oxygen in my lungs and learning how to walk with this gravity, and feeling as if I'm the first that landed, and I have to go and tell people that this planet is inhabitable.
Oh, wow.
But all of my trips are like that. I was like, go write, document, and report back to the people that this is sustainable. I've forgiven the ocean. I did acid in the ocean. And I had to thank the ocean for its service and apologize to it for what we have done to it also.
That's funny. I remember, like, I never really, coming from where I came from with so much kind of insanity, I always joke like acid would always seem like a luxury of people who had stability, like stable homes. I was like, no, all the kids who were just like out of their minds on acid in high school and college and stuff, they didn't seem to have so much like craziness, but maybe that's a theory you defy. Because I never wanted to do it just because I didn't want to get some phone call that like, oh, X having a breakdown again and blah 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 when I was in the middle of a trip. So I partied, but it was like I kind of was a cautious partier. I felt like I was always the one that was like a little bit together, a little bit able to manage. And
Well, I didn't do nothing until 35.
okay, yeah. So that makes sense.
Yeah, so yeah, and I don't do it for parties. Personally, I do it for, like, I like to be in nature because and I think, me personally, it was good that I had like a connection to my instincts, and I was going into these things with a purpose, not to get high, but to explore and see if I could talk to the creator and reach those levels. But when I see people do it just to get high, I'm so weirded out by it because I'm like, it's so much information that you can
Yeah.
get and so much in tune and life changing stuff that can happen, but it's right under your nose, but you just like throw all that to the side just to
Yeah.
like listen to music and try to get laid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I ended up when I was in Sri Lanka, everyone was doing it, and I was like 33. And I'd always been pretty wary, but it seemed very clean, and it was just such an amazing environment, but I couldn't hold joy. I was, and a lot of that is just old stuff. I just always felt like the minute I felt good, I was suspicious. I'd be like, oh, shit's about to go down. And I couldn't really
Yeah.
appreciate that moment. And so I did it very intentionally to try and went in the ocean, actually, and had an amazing experience and feel like something did heal in that experience. I do feel like after that, I was able to have a joyful experience without feeling panicked.
Yeah. It's tough to feel when you do it right, to feel anxiety and panic because you're so in the present.
Mm-hmm.
Did you pee in the ocean?
I did. I have peed in the ocean. Yes.
No, I'm saying on your trip, on your
Oh yeah, I
when you was
did.
yeah, you have to, because it's just like it's just it is a release of things. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And it's a freedom in doing it, and it feels crazy.
Yeah. I remember we were with this guy, and he was like a Swede, because when you're traveling, you just end up hooking up with all the crazy other travelers. And he was always on like 24/7, just always on acid. But he had all of these tricks, and his one trick was, if you're ever kind of losing it and feel like, he's like, oh, I've left my body many times and I wasn't sure if I was ever coming back. But he had a trick to just basically look down at your feet and say, you are here. And that was a way he grounded himself in tripping. But
Yep.
I use it in life all the time. I was like, I don't have any tattoos, and the only one I've ever wanted is in Sinhalese, the Sri Lankan language. I'd love to get "you are here" like on the top of my foot.
Oh wow. Yeah, I think that's the stuff I think is important when you go off on some of these journeys, is to have those things, even in dreams. Even when you have dreams at night, you should have those things to remind you that, oh, this is not real. This is just a dream. And to get whatever message you can from either one of those things, you know what I mean? Um, to me, it's a lesson in every trip. And for those who don't know, acid is like mushrooms on cocaine
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
You know, it kicks in way harder, and like your teeth could be like gritty.
Yeah.
But once I'm in nature, it goes away.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in meditation talk. Sam Harris is like a huge proponent of using psychedelics, and they're doing tons of science around this now. I mean, they were always kind of started with acid being a science of this kind of exploration, spiritual and consciousness and all of that. And I think it's cool that there's a lot of science and whatnot, and using these psychedelics in a way that is healing. Did you grow up religious or spiritual?
I grew up in the Christian faith, in the Baptist, where everything you do, you going to hell, and you're guilty for having sexual thoughts. et cetera, et cetera. But I would be in church and have like erections and have strong connections to different things when the energy rises. But my instincts, I remember hearing my instincts over everything. And that's when I first started to learn to trust my gut, you know.
Mm-hmm. And
So the gut was always over the church.
is that your spiritual practice? Do you have a practice, or is it more just like, do you have a daily practice that you do to keep in touch, or?
Sometimes I do affirmations in the morning, but and I have a mantra for tea and meditation. But I think sometimes when I do affirmations, it breaks the voice that tell me things to do today. Like sometime when I'm like waking up, something will be like, hey, call this person or do that. And I'll do it just in the nick of time. But when I get up and start doing affirmations, I block that out.
Interesting.
So I necessarily, yeah, I don't have the only practice I think which is important is learning to understand the difference between your instincts and like fear or other things.
How do you tease out those two things?
You take action.
Yeah.
You take action or yeah, even when it's something you think is fear, you have to determine like why you there, like, oh man, am I scared of something or is this a warning?
Right.
Or you would go and do the thing and you was like, oh, I shouldn't have did that.
Yeah.
So like, oh, that was fear, you know. So you learn like just like with doing stand-up or anything through trial and error. But you want to have it all down before you make like big decisions.
Yeah. In yoga, there used to be my first yoga instructor used to say, is this a fear that's keeping me alive or a fear that's keeping me from living? And I loved that.
Oh yeah, see, I think I need to use that now.
Yeah. Take it. Take it and run
I
with
need to
it.
use that now. As the diet changes and you get older and like your mate make suggestions, because we ain't even get into growing up with crazy people and how it affects your relationships.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a totally different thing. So when your partner makes suggestions, I have to look at it like, is this keeping me from, alive or keeping me from living, which could be both.
Yeah. How has it affected your relationships?
I think I don't have an expectation for what a relationship is because I just don't know what that is versus somebody else. So it's a lot of finger pointing sometimes that could come in my direction for not knowing those things.
Right.
And then if somebody tell you that this is what a relationship is, you could be like, I don't believe that. That sounds dumb,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that, especially with my girlfriend. She's very mature emotionally, and I don't deal with emotions as much. So she might listen to her emotions more than the logistics.
Mm-hmm.
And I listen to the logistics more. So I'm like, that don't make sense, Like I can show you this thing and like this is what it is. And she like, nah.
I mean, part of that too is just sure maybe your upbringing, but also I mean, I would also say it's maleness, although I'd probably get yelled at for saying that. And I also think it's you're an engineer. Like your background is in you're kind of a STEM guy. So your default is to try and look at things from that perspective.
It's all of it. It's the trust. I don't trust it. I need to see it, or I'm gonna prove it. I could come up with a theory for
Yeah.
why I'm this way. You know, she's telling me this makes her feel bad, and I'm telling her why I do it logically.
Right, right. Have you ever gone to therapy, or do you believe in therapy, or not really for you? It's not for everyone.
Well, I don't think it's for me. I think people should go. I
Mhm.
always had a stage.
Mhm.
But yeah, I always could go bomb somewhere. But I think it's certain tools, right? Like I'm not here without reading, like, at the time, like, self-help,
Right.
and stuff like that too. But I do think it's tools. Like, now I got triggers, right? And understanding what that is. And I have to have the tools to not act on them as fast.
Yeah.
So I definitely think, it's something that I would have to get into or find versions of it. But just going into a room and telling somebody my secrets, I don't think everybody should leave the room.
You're like you're like someone's not coming out alive.
Yeah, someone's gonna come out if I do that. You know what I mean? So, uh, yeah. So I do think it needs to be a healthy way, especially understanding what when you're depressed, and understanding when you're sad, and when you hit a low, and how to deal with those things. Like, I've definitely learned that to not think of myself, like, stop thinking about myself and my circumstances, and try to help somebody else.
Yeah.
Helps in one way or another, because you become part of a bigger thing than yourself, or you become part of a collective. Um, so, but I do recommend, especially if you're in any form of entertainment, or if you stuck anywhere in life, or you stuck at your job, then and you can't change nothing else but yourself. And I've always done that, being here, when I felt like I was stuck, or I
Mhm.
start complaining about other things or other people, or why this ain't happening, then I'm like, oh, I have to change myself.
Mhm. Yes.
You know,
There's a big
that's how I've always broken through.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so smart and wise of you, because I feel like part of the reason I see exponential craziness is we live in a society where it's very rewarded to A, feel like a victim, and B, be focusing on everything else outside of us. And all of everything is, you can be online raging about the system or whatever, and your room is a mess. And I hate to sound like Jordan Peterson, but go clean your room, just go.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what you need to do. It's an easy way to avoid. And I learned that kind of through my 20s, just when I was dealing with the effects of my upbringing, how much of a victim I felt like, and how much I wanted to point fingers and blame everyone else. And at a certain point, I had to really just take responsibility for where I was and make something. It didn't matter. It
Yep.
mattered, but those were the cards I was dealt, and now I've got to figure out how to play them, or no one's going to do that for me. And I kept waiting kind of to be rescued, and I wrote on a whiteboard in my apartment. This was during that living, very broke on my blow up mattress. I wrote, "No one is coming." And I looked at that every
Agreed.
day.
It's one thing about the balance, right? It's one thing I learned from conservatives is they have that mindset sometimes.
Yeah.
That's why they make the moves they make, because they like, yo, nobody's coming. Or if you look at a president like Trump, if he's like billions of dollars in debt, I mean, he got to do what he got to do. You know what I mean? So
That's a
and
trust.
then
Yeah. I mean, I would push back and say that's a trust fund mentality, because I grew up around a lot of kids who came from money, and they didn't know there was always there was someone always who was coming to rescue them in that instance.
yeah, but I mean, I also I met a Haitian. I was in another country, and he told me he was like, he showed me his police scars, and he was like, we get beat up just like y'all. He's like, the difference is y'all got a chance. Y'all got a chance to make it. And I was like, you're right.
Right.
You know, we do have privileges in this country that we might not know about because we've been in it so long.
Yeah.
And when you view it from the outside, it's like, oh shit, we could get beat by the police, but we could do it in a Bentley. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or we could do it on a full stomach, or you know, all these other things we take for granted. So between that and listening to like immigrants and stuff like that, it made me complain less and just try to grind more, because that's what those generations did when they landed.
Yeah. I was married. My first marriage was to a Belarusian, which is like pretty much the only remaining dictatorship. I don't know if you know anything about Belarus. It's like the very small country, only remaining dictatorship in Europe, essentially. They have a literal dictator. And he came when he was like 19, spoke no English, and was just like hustling up through the system. I'm like, this kid has nothing and has figured out how to work this system better. And sure, he has the perspective of being from the outside and seeing it, but you know, there was no excuse for me not being able to use those resources or figure out those loopholes or work hard enough to do a lot of the things that he was figuring out. There was just no excuse. I was using a lot of excuses, but he saw the opportunity and took it and ran with it. And it's weird too now.
I
like
agree.
I don't know how old are you? You don't have to tell me if it's like, I know we're weird about that in this town.
Yeah, I'm weird. I'm one of those guys, but I'm like, I'm close to you.
Okay. So we I kind of grew up in like hustle culture. There's a weird, strange backlash that I don't understand to hustle culture right now. And I feel like an old person who's like, the kids these days don't want to hustle. What have you noticed this at all, or is it just something just me?
Yeah, I noticed that with my nephew, and like he would ask, you know, we nickel and dime and try to flip and do certain things that I remember doing, like focus groups, you know what I mean? And I'd be like 3 different people taste testing like Pepsi, cherry Coke or something like that, getting $50 a pop, $75 a pop, changing shirts and putting glasses on and doing stuff like that, you know what I mean? And they won't do that now. And you know, I think $150 is different to these kids now than it was for us growing up. That still was a chunk of change.
Is that inflation?
Inflation and the stuff they buy now, you know, the stuff they got access to. It wasn't no internet to go and get on and like get stuff off eBay. So, you know, I gave my goddaughter $50 the other day, and she just took it and just walked off. And I was like, man, you know, I used to make $15 a set. You just took this money and then didn't even. Yeah, it was wild. But I'm like, this is no money. For them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think they got it in them, but they got to survive a whole different thing, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah, no.
But I'm scared of what they got to go through. That the way they're being judged and stuff now is different. Like cost of living is even lower in Atlanta, and they will make fun of you bad. But in LA, it's such a lifestyle city. Like I remember not even having haircuts, and just, you know, you could walk around with old jeans on, and it's almost celebrated. And I was like, oh, this is dope. You know? Your clothes ain't got to match. You just out.
Yeah.
You just out at bars doing comedy, and it's such a beautiful thing to me.
Yeah. My husband and I joke about that all the time. We'll be walking around our neighborhood and there will be someone shuffling through, and I'm like, could be homeless, could be a millionaire. You just never really know in LA. that person might have just,
you never know, man.
Be an old producer who's got a couple of $1 billion, and you never know. Yeah, that's very true about this city.
And it's Balenciaga.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the Balenciaga look, you know.
This has been so fun. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I am going to ask you the same 2 questions I ask everybody at the end of my podcast. What's your biggest defect of character?
That I know?
Yes, that you know.
Or that somebody tell me?
That's an interesting perspective. You can give me
Because
both
when they tell
answers.
me my defaults, when somebody tell me my defaults, I'm like, that's what got me here.
Mm.
So I look at everything as a balance. Because if it wasn't for those different things, I would probably still be in a place I don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what people tell me is I am stubborn, and I've been getting that I'm like a child sometimes, and I'm like, woo, you know what I mean? Uh,
I like
and
that.
it might hurt at first, and I'm like, man, it just make them seem older. Like, what's the rush?
Mm-hmm.
I'm only here 30 more years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna get. So while I can walk and like, I'm starting to have little aches now. So I'm like, man, I'm just gonna have a ball.
Yeah. That's smart.
But yeah, I'm definitely stubborn. I'm definitely like, if my instincts tell me something, or if I have a belief or something, I'm just gonna ride with it. I don't care what's going on. I
It's
don't
all
care if you think I'm silly. I don't care if you think, whatever name call you call it. It don't matter. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's also what's got you here. You need to be tenacious and stubborn to make it, especially in this town.
Agreed.
It's so cool.
Somebody invented the telephone. Remember that.
Yeah. We were watching
Somebody.
The Aviator last night, which I haven't seen in a while, and I love that movie. But he was another one who was just like a visionary. Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely out of his mind, but visionary.
So be a visionary.
What's your biggest asset?
Man. I think faith. Faith, because I came out here following my instincts, not knowing what that was, not knowing what the promised land looked like. You know what I mean? And what it tastes like, it smelled like, and I came all the way out here. And in 2015, or no, 2017, I was sitting in the Dead Sea, and I was like, how the hell did I get here? And I was like, oh, this is such an old life that I'm living. Like, this came to me like 15 years ago. So I need to create what is the next thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I say it's something like that. It's like faith, my girl is Israeli, so it's weird how it all worked out.
I was going to ask you.
She's from there, so I go there.
Okay, I was going to say, why were you in the Dead Sea? It's funny. I just was talking to my friends in Israel about how I want to go there. It's like I've been to Egypt, but I haven't been to Israel. So I've just been dying to go to Israel, and it's calling me. So I'll probably.
You got to go.
Yeah.
You got to go before it's too late.
Yeah.
It's being taken over as we speak.
Yeah.
So go.
Well, I definitely needed to talk to you today. This was so inspiring and uplifting, and just a reminder of my faith and why I'm here too. After my little like mini diva-esque meltdown. It's so weird too, because I felt like such a diva, but I'm like, I don't even have a right to feel like a diva. I was like, I've got, all I see is my jowls on the camera, just like the insecurity, and you just came in and you cleared out those cobwebs in our conversation, and I appreciate you.
I see it too. I was adjusting my hat and trying to figure out what's going on, but that's how it is. You know what I mean? I was like, you think like some of the great speakers were like that?
Yeah.
Like, you think Dr. King, before he gave a speech, he was like, hold on, I'm about to go hit him with something right quick. So that's what I always think about, like, because those things are not talked about throughout history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's okay to be a diva. I have moments, and they say I shouldn't act like that, and I'm like, I'm human, and I could do it. I could do it.
You're working with
I want it
Natalie
done. Let's do
Portman.
it.
I mean, my goodness.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not that around them. I don't think, but it's show business is weird coming from comedy because they try to come and fix your clothes and stuff. And you like, people try to take your bags when you go to a hotel, but you got trust issues. So it's two of y'all holding the handle, and it's like, no, I'm gonna take it to the room.
Yeah.
And they look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's just an elevator. Get out of here.
I was joking with my husband. We've been watching. He's never seen The Crown, and he's just had it on in the background. And I've always said, like, those guys, they lived 100 years almost because they never had to dress themselves. I'm like, I think we underestimate how much dressing ourselves takes off our life expectancy because those people never dress themselves. Well, we're having a hard time getting Byron back. So go follow Byron on social media at Byron Bowers and his Twitter and his Instagram handle. And you can go to Byron Bowers Live to see more information about where he might be doing stand-up near you. All right. Thank you, Byron. This was great.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry the video broke up. I don't know if it's me. It showed LTE the whole time. And man, y'all have a good day. And thank you for listening. Peace.
It's time for the weekly check-in with Bridget and cousin Maggie.
Hello.
Hello.
We've got 10 minutes before this baby wakes up.
Yep.
We're always on a deadline with her.
She's the showrunner.
Uh-huh.
I love this podcast, truly.
You just came off a great conversation.
They're all great.
Yeah.
I love talking to people.
I know.
I just love talking to people.
I love this podcast too. I love watching the interviews.
I just enjoy
I feel like
hearing.
I always learn something.
Yeah, every single one. I feel like I learn something about the person. You learn something about yourself. They come with their own story and factory settings that, I don't know. It suits me, this kind of thing, because I'm the person that will get your whole life story on a train ride.
Right. Someone else's perspective on something.
Yeah. So I just had such a good, and I've been talking to a lot of comedians too, which is always fun. And then I had a TikTok influencer, which is, that was hilarious because she mentioned something about graduating high school. And then I asked her when she graduated and she said, I can't remember, which I feel like that's a thing that you're trying to remember if you're...
Or you just don't want people to know your age.
You don't want people to know your age. Yeah. So I don't think it was her not knowing. I think it was just her being like, I don't really
evasive
want it.
about it. Which is, I totally get in this
I
industry.
get it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually ask people before I can even ask them how old they are, if they care if I ask.
Right.
And usually they don't. But yeah, she said, I don't remember I'm old. And then, so I was trying to put her at ease and I was like, I graduated in 97. And then she's like, I was born in 97. Like, and you freaking think you're old. I'm going to go
I know.
unalive. But she is in that age range where you think you're old.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
When you're in your mid 20s and you're like, I'm old.
And now we're going to look at this time in our lives and be like, we were so young.
Yeah.
In 20 years.
Yep.
When we're sitting on a beach earning 20%.
I don't know. I hope. We just don't know.
No, we don't.
I realized too that I could talk to somebody about being a business owner and an entrepreneur forever.
Yeah.
It's just there was a writing prompt in the Substack and Phetasy community with the Write Club that we've been doing. And it was, what 5 subjects could you talk to somebody about endlessly?
Uh-huh.
And I definitely realized today that business ownership and entrepreneurship is one that I could talk about endlessly.
It's its own animal, for sure.
You just learn so much.
Yeah.
Even this past week dealing with the freaking thug mafia city of Los Angeles.
The tax man.
I mean, I cannot tell you how much this stuff keeps me up, but like Fred, who I just interviewed, was saying, he's like, it should keep you up. You know, you won't make that mistake again. And I'm like, I want to blame everyone. And I know that as business owner, the buck has to stop with me, even if some of these other things could be true, like that my tax guy should have probably known about this, and the city of LA is just literally stealing money from me because they can. it's an injustice, it's still on me as the business owner to be on top of knowing what those stupid little minutia
and what that means and all that shit.
And we all know that's not my strength.
I know.
But it's still like, well, I won't be making that freaking mistake ever again.
Yep.
It's just so frustrating. And that's what Fred was saying. He's like, you know what? When you make those mistakes, like I've invested in things and it's gone poorly and I've lost some money. It's like, no, I just paid for that knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way of looking at it.
I'm like, well, that will be one way I psychologically reframe the rage I feel towards the city of LA, because right now I'm having an internal Michael Douglas moment in falling down.
I just took what are they called? Like an online seminar about taxes for X amount of money.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite a revealing lesson. But it is true, too, that this is why I rage so hard against what I feel is like going after small businesses. This kind of rule that they took this money from me that exists, that I would be exempt from if you don't file. Why does this rule even exist if not to just steal from people who are already buried, small business owners
struggling, who are trying to figure it out?
Yeah, it's so stupid. It should not be a rule that even exists. It shouldn't even be legal. And it just is to make everything harder for a small business owner. Then we had the AB 40, which was punishing people for having independent contractors or being an independent contractor. Now you have the going federalized version of this, which is making it tough. Everything in the country right now is pushing more toward like being in a union, working for the government. You need to work a 9 to 5. And I think the thing that makes this country so great, the greatest in the world, is the ability to come here and start a company and make your way and pull yourself up.
The entrepreneurial spirit. It's what built America.
And I wonder too if that, and this was something that I was telling Fred that I wanted, because he was thinking about maybe starting a podcast. And I was like, well, one of the discussions that I'm fascinated with that I see on Twitter happening and with the like Gen Z is this, it's like hustle culture is looked down on now. It's fallen out of fashion. And it's weird for me who came up with hustle culture.
Yeah.
I didn't even think there was anything other than hustle culture.
Else.
It just seems like that's called life.
Right. Well, yeah. You and Byron talked about it in this episode, actually.
And I haven't seen anyone really frame that discussion. Yeah. It's like I see it happening online. I see individual articles about it, but I would love for somebody to just have a podcast where they talk. That's the frame. It's kind of like the frame on this podcast is people's stories and of grit and resilience.
Right.
I mean, kind of hustle culture.
Overcoming obstacles.
Wait, this is my podcast. Never mind. But I would love to see somebody have different people on different ages talking about someday I'm going to be in a position where I can have this idea and go find people
to do, then you can produce it.
To produce it.
Yeah.
I'll be like, I want to see this
in the world. And then make it in a matter of weeks. One day.
But yeah, that was something I was like, why don't you do that? And he has access to celebrities. And I'm like, that would be so cool.
We're just digging deep into YouTube too, determined to like crack the algorithm. And just
the more we dig, the more I'm like, oh no, it isn't the algorithm. We are just, we do just suck.
Yeah, we just suck. Yeah.
The more that we go down this, I'm like,
okay, well, we need to do this, and we need to do that, and we gotta fix this, and we gotta do this. It's like, we will not let this beat us.
How about maybe not creating a show for television on YouTube? Yeah.
You have to create a YouTube show for YouTube, which just means certain things, like at the end. And
like no credits.
Yeah.
And then not a 10-minute outro.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll get it figured out at some point.
It just cracks me up because the more I go into it and look at the analytics and read about the best time, I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah.
No, we do just suck. It's not the algorithm.
I know. And I was watching this video, and this guy has a team of 2 other people and him specifically for his thumbnails. And they spend like an hour meeting on creating the perfect thumbnail for this video.
Oh, I know. One of our friends was telling me that they have a mutual person in this industry, and they are like, oh, I can send you our person. I think it's like $75 a thumbnail. I was like, okay, well,
we're going to do the best we can for now. My Canva skills have gotten much better. Eventually, we'd like to be able to hire someone, but we're just not there yet. We're not there yet.
And then I heard that some people are like swapping their thumbnails out every 12 hours to see which ones perform the best. And then when the one that perform,
and we're just like, what title makes us laugh?
Literally, our tards galore.
Our tards galore strikes again. I mean,
yeah,
we can only learn.
No keywords. Just like, what title do we think is funny?
What random line from the show is funny?
No context. No.
Come on, Susan. You got to watch Dumpster Fire to get that joke.
I still believe that a lot of people will pretend they watch Dumpster Fire all along. Someday.
And we know how many of you there are out there that actually do.
I was telling Fred the story of Costco. And, we were talking about how you have to be delusional to start a business, but you also have to be able to fearlessly evaluate your delusions
and realize you're delusional.
Yeah,
and
it's not the
learn
algorithm.
Some hard truths.
I just suck.
I know. I can't get over the fact too that Bridget, we were laughing about this the other day. So Bridget tweeted it, and then Jaron texted her like 2 minutes later being like, are you okay?
Like, honey, are you okay? I mean, not in that voice. Not, honey, are you okay? In his sexy podcast voice. I was like, oh, he's so sweet. He's worried I'm here having a breakdown.
It's never out of the realm of possibility.
Tune in next week for another riveting episode that will change your life, help you get out of your own way, and solve all the world's problems. I want to thank our composer, Jared Elias, my co-producer and cousin, Maggie, and all of you out there listening. This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.